Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and talk about the week's events in the world of Scientology, as reported on Tony's Substack. Hey, Tony, welcome back.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be here.
Yep, got some things to talk about. We had a week. There were some interesting things. Again, sort of more public-facing stuff than a whole lot of legal things, although there was one fun story with this. So let's start with there was an article today. You posted a video, and I just couldn't wait to talk about this. This little 2.5 minute video from the Church of Scientology about being an auditor. Where did this come from? What was this about?
Yeah, Alex Barnes Ross came across it and forwarded it to me. Nice thing for him to do. And I guess what's kind of interesting about it, first of all, it's got that slick Scientology media productions vibe to it. But it's really promoting the idea of being an auditor and how much that will unlock your great life, your cool life as an auditor. Ooh, you'll end up driving a nice car. But what I thought was odd about it is it sort of sets up the idea of how lousy your life is with animation, and to just suggest various ways your life might not be fulfilling, like the housewife who's got all kinds of problems, and the foreman whose workers are rebelling, and then auditing fixes everything. Of course, it doesn't explain how, it doesn't really explain what it is, but it's just sort of a hype video to get you excited about paying for training and not just regular processing. So I thought that was interesting because we all know that under L. Ron Hubbard, that was the main goal, was bring in new people with books and then train them to be auditors. But right. that kind of changed under David Miscavige. Miscavige has now been at the head of this movement even longer than Hubbard was. And he's made the emphasis much more on fundraising and buildings and much less on creating new auditors. But just recently now, we've seen a couple of mailers or flyers or videos that are focusing on making auditors. Maybe Miscavige is trying to change things around a little bit. I don't know. But I just thought the video was odd in some way. It seemed a little obnoxious to me. I figured you might have seen some things in it that I didn't. How did it strike you?
Well, here were the two things I thought, and I think this is going to address why you thought it was so odd. Is first off, the whole thing is a quote from Hubbard. They don't make it clear in the video. They throw in these words out there, but every piece is taken from a bulletin Hubbard wrote in 1960 called "What We Expect of a Scientologist." So this is a quote video without showing you it's a quote video, which I thought was a little weird for Scientology, because they showed you one part where it quoted Hubbard clearly, but the whole thing is, and the wording that Hubbard used in that bulletin, again, this is from 64 years ago, is a little trite. The housewife and the factory foreman and these jobs and these ideas and these positionings that he gives, they just seem a little antiquated and a little weird in modern times. And I think that's one reason why it strikes an odd chord watching it. That was my first thought. The second thing was the message is utterly bizarre. If you become an auditor, suddenly your world is wonderful. You're a superhero. Everybody's giving you all the things. And they never, ever once in this animation show you a thing that this auditor is doing that's different from before. They show a housewife in a house that's chaotic, and then she gets trained and suddenly the house is wonderful. Why? What did she do that was so different?
Right.
And this is what I wanted to say, is because Scientology isn't really about doing anything. It's about being something. And that's kind of important. And I thought this video kind of encapsulated that whole concept in 2 minutes.
Oh, interesting.
My thoughts.
The other video that was a part of that piece was the Scientology announcement that the IAS Gala will be October 25th to 27th, which is, less than 3 weeks from now, and I just think about all those Scientologists that now have to put their businesses on hold and set up flights and set up accommodations. And I don't know. It's funny that they spring it on them so last minute, but I think there's a reason. I think the reason is they're concerned about what Alex has in store for them for his demonstrations this year. Like last year, they've spent since July trying to argue with their attorneys that a special zone should be set up around St. Hill, protecting it from demonstrations. That's not going to happen. But the district, Mid Sussex District Council, is going to consider information about that based on this year's demonstration. So there's a lot at stake, but it's just so funny the way Scientology keeps its own program under wraps until the very last second. I mean, that's just got to be a
Absolutely.
pain for these Scientologists that now have to figure out how to get over there, where they're going to stay.
Absolutely. And it always has been. There has been an effort over the years of that last minute business, but I absolutely think that this is a direct reflection of Alex's work over there and the sort of war footing that he's put them on at St. Hill. With his actions, he's constantly coming at him from these different directions.
Yeah.
And this protest thing is big because this is where, if there was one event to disrupt, this would be the one, because it's where all the big money people are. And if there's going to be celebrities, they're going to, usually come to this one. So, it's, I think he's still showing that Scientology is trying to pretend that they don't care about him while showing the exact opposite. I don't know. What do you think? Is that your take on that?
I think it's a sign of desperation, and it'll just be interesting to see who actually shows up. I mean, how many celebrities are you going to get when it's that last minute? I mean, maybe they've been giving them some hints ahead of time, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say what gets communicated behind the scenes, because I've seen both many times as a behind the scenes person on event production in Scientology, which I did for a lot. There would sometimes be, no, the celebrities find out beforehand, or the important people find out beforehand. But then other times, it was all Miscavige's schedule and his whim and his release of when he was going to be there. And and just as information, in case this isn't known, David Miscavige's physical location at any time is one of the most kept, tightly guarded secrets in Scientology.
Right.
Even in the Sea Org, if you're asking where he is or what he's up to, people are going to look at you and go, "Why do you want to know?"
Right.
It becomes a thing. So, okay. So yeah, covered the IAS event. That was awesome. You had a story come out this week that I really wanted to comment on, which was the Brendan Ty story about his escape and his what was it, his 13th year out?
Yeah, so Brendan worked security in the Sea Org, and he came out a number of years ago and did some press. Really interesting stuff. And then he's been a little bit quieter lately. And then for his last week, he posted on Facebook something about how it's been 13 years since he left Scientology, and he wanted to share a memory of something that was kind of his breaking point. That had happened a little earlier. It took him a little longer to actually leave, but people reach that sort of boiling point where then it's like then they're starting to look to leave.
Yep.
And he talked about working security one night at an event where there were those trophies, IAS trophies, and a lot of celebrities, and a celebrity chef that he thought might have been Gordon Ramsay. He's not 100% sure now, all these years later, but that they've been up all day and night for days and then really just exhausted. But the chef wanted people to eat some of this extra food they had, and so he's like, "Okay, great, I'll have a plate of really good food." And when he went to eat it, this superior of his told him to dump out the plate. They don't get to eat that stuff. You have to eat these sandwiches, moldy sandwiches that had been left out in the sun.
Yep.
And it was so disrespectful and so awful. And then they kept working super late, and he had to drive home some guys. And he was so tired, he almost got in a really bad accident, got sideswiped by a truck. And again, no sympathy for it. He ended up having to pay for the truck damage out of his measly $50 a week. And all of this together was just how degraded he felt in the Sea Org, and that they just didn't appreciate the work they did, and that set him on the path to leaving. Well, I thought it was great. It was well written. It was really interesting. I asked him if I could repost it at the bunker, but I asked him, look, you said all the celebrities were there. How about giving me some names? So I got him talking about some more detail. And so, Tom Cruise was there, and he and Katie Holmes were there because this was in summer 2007. So less than a year since Tom and Katie had been married. It was a maiden voyage celebration, but it was on land. It wasn't on the ship, and it was in St. Petersburg, and they were giving out trophies to some award winners. Once I started asking him about specifics of who was there, he told me some amazing things. First of all, that Bob and Trish Duggan, who were still together then, were there that night, and that they were pressured into giving. I mean, they've given hundreds of millions to the church, but they were given put some pressure to give $10 million that night, and the pressure came from David Miscavige and Tom Cruise, who went over to their table and really put the pressure on them. And Brendan said they were told that Tom Cruise offered to match it. So not only is that a much higher single donation than I've ever heard about on a single night, but that Tom Cruise matched it. We knew that Tom a couple of years before that had been named Platinum Meritorious. He was like the first person to get the Platinum Meritorious award. It was in a magazine, Scientology magazine. That's 2.5 million. But nothing since then. And we've always sort of figured that he must be giving donations and asking them not to recognize him for him, not to publish it. And here's evidence of that in 2007, apparently he gave a $10 million gift to match the Duggans, and we've never seen any publication about that. So Scientology is keeping that quiet.
Yeah.
The other thing that was really surprising that he told me when I asked him for more detail was that he wanted to point out that he was armed, that they had asked him to go get training and get licensure so he could carry a weapon. And he was very close to Tom Cruise and David Miscavige, that this was his job. And I don't know, for me, that was just a really interesting detail, that Tom Cruise and David Miscavige have armed guards around them, Sea Org members, and that, Brendan Ty was doing that, and he was very close to them. So some really fascinating details that came out once I started asking him for more. So I just thought altogether it was a really interesting look at that sort of world of the most wealthy Scientologists and celebrities.
Absolutely. And agreed. The arming of the security guards in the Sea Org is something that went in and out and was controversial even within the Sea Org while I was there. It was not common that you would have armed guards on the base. They would generally carry nightsticks or mace or something. But when on detail for Miscavige, and pack security was often used for that, even taking them to the free winds and stuff. They would be armed, or they could get armed, or get training for that. And then, of course, there's the private security that he also hires and uses, and you can guarantee those people are armed.
Right.
I was most, the celebrity stuff absolutely was a reveal, and confirming one of the few times where we know, okay, big, huge amount of money that just doesn't appear on any books anywhere. How much more of that is there, right? Well, if Tom and Bob are, palling around in 2007, talking about $10 million donations, you're absolutely guaranteed that's not the one and only time that kind of thing happened. Especially during that time period where Tom Cruise was all but blackmailing his other celebrities to get more involved and be part of the whole thing, right?
Right.
The other thing that I had to comment on, though, because it hit me right in the feels reading Brandon's story, was the casual cruelty of the Sea Org. It just hit me, just that, no, you can't have that, throw it away. it's the same kind of like psycho mentality as we hear about, in places where they're just throwing away food rather than giving it to employees or something like it, in fast food and stuff. Just these crazy wastages, this attitude that you don't deserve this. And the reason it hit me in the feels is because there were about 20 times I was in the exact same position as Brendan of that, with the putting on the events, and you're surrounded by opulence, by high class food, high class people, and you don't get to have any of it. Mr. Sea Org member, it was a weird, weird place to be, that we would think of ourselves as senior human beings, as senior people, and yet allow ourselves to be degraded in such a horrible fashion. And it was just the life of a Sea Org member. And that really epitomized a lot in there. And that's why I wanted to highlight that too.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay. Now a couple more stories here. Rebecca Minkhoff, Real Housewives of New York. I guess this aired. What happened?
Well, the first episode of season 15 did air this week of Real Housewives of New York City. We've been waiting to see Rebecca Minkhoff's involvement in it. She just was in a little bit in this first episode. The one real zinger about her were one of the housewives. She's not one of the housewives. She's one of the friends of the cast. But one of the housewives had said something about, oh yeah, Rebecca Minkoff, her handbags are available at Nordstrom Rack. Just as sort of a slam on her. But it's true. I mean, Rebecca Minkoff's business has not been doing quite as well as it has before. She admitted to, in a magazine interview with Elle magazine, that's what's motivating her to go on reality TV, is that her business has really taken a hit since the pandemic, and this will help raise her visibility. She will probably be more involved in the coming episodes. And of course, that show is just all about these women fighting with each other over silly misunderstandings, that kind of thing. But I mean, it's interesting timing because right now her dad is being sued for being involved in yet another Scientology death, and he's accused of just horrific negligence regarding this woman Whitney Mills. And we've known this guy as a quack for forever. I mean, his license was suspended for a year after he was giving prescribing sedatives for Lisa McPherson without even examining her. And at his clinic, he's diagnosing all these crazy things. Poor Whitney Mills, he told her she had ovarian cancer. She didn't. And he told her that she had parasites. She didn't. And this is a woman going through severe mental crisis. I mean, it was just the worst thing that could be done to her. So that's a lawsuit that I think a lot of people are going to watch. The media is going to watch. Meanwhile, his daughter, with whom he was celebrated for, David Minkoff and Rebecca Minkhoff were at a IAS event at the Flag Land Base. Yeah, I think it was Flag Land Base in 2019, and got a trophy for donating $5 million to the IAS. And she's in the picture with him. And not only that, but I've reported over the years about how she's been very public about really going to bat for Scientology's front groups. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that the rest of the press is being real careful and saying Rebecca Minkoff's ties to Scientology. I mean, come on. She's a lifelong Scientologist, a $5 million donor, and she's out front pushing Scientology's front groups. Right. This is not somebody that has ties to Scientology, Yeah. So, but they're being very chicken about it, and they're not even asking her good questions. I mean, there was a New York Post story this week to go with the premiere of the episode, and they let her get away with just saying, "Oh, yeah, everybody wants to talk about Scientology. All I can tell you, it's really helped me have less stress in my life." That's it. How about asking her about her quack dad being involved in 2 deaths? How about asking her about, helping the drug-free world front group infiltrate New York City's schools in order to hand out bogus information about drugs from L. Ron Hubbard? I mean, these are basic questions reporters should be asking her, and they're not going to. So, but anyway, so the season has premiered, and we'll see. Maybe in later episodes she'll have more to do.
Yeah, You know, I have strong feelings about celebrity media and access media and how, that kind of thing. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. But I think you're nailing it. I think she's getting away with, kind of getting a full pass when she is not in a position to deserve any such thing, especially with her father and that case. I just can't think of too many other people I know with professional titles who are Scientologists who have done more damage than that man. It's yes, he is just such a scum of the earth, that guy.
Well, and the thing is, we only know about these things that happened to Whitney Mills because her mother's not a Scientologist and is willing to sue the church over what happened. How many Scientologists went to David Minkhoff for help and were terribly abused, but they won't say a word because they're Scientologists,
Exactly. That's such an important question. And I guarantee you, in these 20 years, whatever, 30 years since Lisa McPherson's death, tragic, preventable death, that this man has malpracticed against many, many, many Scientologists. No question about it. Okay, now there was some justice this week. Michelle Fiore, what was the story?
Oh, wow. Yeah, so Michelle Fiore is this kind of well-known conservative firebrand Las Vegas City Council member, former, who had also been a state legislator, and she was most recently serving as a local judge. She's known for her, just real support of gun culture. She actually sent out a Christmas card one year with every member of her family, including the little kids, holding these, very menacing looking firearms. Bizarre looking Christmas card. She inserted herself in the 2016 federal standoff with the Bundys in Oregon. I mean, she's just a really she gets a lot of press for her stands. And 4 or 5 years ago, I happened to see a picture of her in a Scientology magazine. And I was very confusing. I'm like, why would Michelle Fiore be in the Free Winds magazine? Well, the only people who get to go to Free Winds are Scientologists. So I started saying, hey, besides being known for her, ideas about guns and her conservative politics, she's also a Scientologist. And, most other news organizations wouldn't touch that. So in 2021, she talked about running for governor, and it was kind of brash and kind of crazy. And people were saying, you know what? She's trying to distract from the fact that the FBI raided her house this year. And of course, the question is, why did they do that? What kind of trouble is she in? Nobody knew. Finally, this summer, it was revealed that the federal government was prosecuting her for corruption. That there was this police officer who was killed in Las Vegas, and she was part of an effort to put up a statue of him in a local park. What she didn't tell people was that a company had agreed to pay for that, but she used some political action committees or political committees that she owned to raise money for the statue that was already paid for, and then spent that money she raised on herself and her daughters. And so it wasn't a ton of money, but it was just disgusting. I mean, it's, this is a woman that goes out there all day talking about how she supports the police and everything, but here she was raising money based on this, fallen officer, and then spending it on things like her daughter's wedding. So trial came up real fast, and they had the trial, and she was convicted of 6 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. And she's looking at 20 years per count. Yeah, it's amazing.
Whoa.
So, but for me, what was really interesting was last week, the federal government put some documents in the docket, including an affidavit when they were trying to convince a judge to allow them to raid her house. They talked about the things they had already found in her financial records. They had gone to her banks and they had gotten her financial records, and they were talking about, listen, we put together how she would take money in for, this statue, then she'd move it over to her political committee, and then she'd spend it. And you could just see the one-to-one correlation. She was doing this. And by the way, one of the things she did was she went to the Caribbean in August 2017, and she paid something called the FSSO, the Flagship Service Organization, which is a Scientology organization. I was like, wow, there it is. I mean, there it is. There's no question now. She went to the free winds in 2017 and paid the FSSO to get whatever auditing she was getting there or courses or whatever. No question. So to me, that was a nice vindication that, I was not crazy. I did see her in a picture in Free Winds magazine. It really was her. And she
Yeah.
was a Scientologist of some sort. I don't know how big it is. Now, of course, today, her Scientology involvement is the least of her worries. I mean, she's looking at, like I said, 20 years per count. I'm sure they'll, who knows what she'll actually get, but
Mm.
pretty
Wow.
bad case.
Man, so many things. I guess all I can really say real fast is simply L. Ron Hubbard insists Scientologists are the most ethical people on the planet. So, okay, Ron, whatever you say.
Yeah, and she was complaining that it was all just a political hit job. They didn't like that she got involved in that 2016 stand-up. But I got to tell you, her sort of like reputation and her standing in the conservative community, I think they would only have gone after her if it was something really egregious, and it doesn't get much more egregious than telling people you're raising money for a fallen police officer and then spending it on plastic surgery and spending it on your daughter's wedding. I mean, and spending it on her rent.
Plus
That's
your
pretty
Scientology
egregious.
vacation, I mean,
Yeah.
come on. I mean, and let's just say, in terms of the free wins, yes, lower level people have gone to the free wins, but it's rare. It is
Well, because that the reason why they have the free wins is it's where they deliver OT8, and it's the only place you can get OT8. But we noticed years ago that that's not paying the bills, and so they asked Scientologists to come out for things like public relations conventions and prosperity seminars. There's a lot of different reasons why Scientologists can come out to the free wins besides OT8. So I mean, look, it's tempting to wonder, has she been a secret Scientologist all this time and she was actually all the way to OT8 already? Or was she there for some other reason? But no question, receipts with FSSO, that doesn't get much more conclusive than that.
Nope, that is definitely that. How interesting. How interesting. Well, you never know, do you? Who might be out there going on up the bridge. Okay, well, thank you, Tony, for your reporting this week. This was some interesting stuff. And we'll have to see where this Minkhoff thing goes. And the IAS protests. Do you have any sort of previews for us for this coming up week?
Well, Alex, part of the post I put out today was a link to Alex's new website. He's got a website specifically for the protest. I think it's iasprotest.com. And that's going to be interesting to see how that develops with Alex. What kind of, remember last year he ran into all kinds of issues with the police and the local officials. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And yeah, the Minkoff case, I'm really interested to see how he answers and how Scientology answers. I'm just, Scientology's asked for yet another delay. They claim that another amended complaint is coming from Layla Mills, Whitney's mother. And of course, they're acting hopeful. Like they think that she's going to focus on Minkoff and dump these Scientology defendants. I don't know. Who knows? But so I'm watching the docket every day, Chris. We'll see.
All right. We'll see what happens, folks. Right there on the screen in front of you, as I say at the end of every show here, you have Tony's Substack address. Go to it, subscribe to it, get your daily notifications, and then come here for the weekly wrap up on Mondays. All right, folks. See you next week. Bye-bye.